Hey guys, Dan here.
And Frank, and we have
And
some guests today with us.
yes, we have Nick over from Sakura Central, and we're going to be interviewing Blake McCarthy from Territory. You guys have seen him before. Issue 4 is out now on digital. Print should be going out soon. Yeah, I guess take it away.
Yeah.
Yeah, give us a little
Oh, yeah,
intro,
sure.
Nick.
So, Sakura Central is a website that my friends and I started. It's between myself and Andreas Perez, Daniel Meany, Christopher Kond, and a couple other guys. Our whole idea was we want to bring together the East and the Western communities around Japanese media, like Kaiju, anime, and so forth, and bring all these communities together. Like, for example, Nido King from Pokemon was based off of Baragon from Godzilla, so the Kaiju and anime community kind of mix together and inspire each other in some ways. Like all these different elements from Japanese media sort of go into each other. And that grew into this bigger idea of like, why don't we put a website together to talk about this, but also in the hope of possibly getting not only these other communities to interact with each other for the first time, but to get the communities from Japan and America together. Like, for example, the Japanese community for Godzilla and the American community for Godzilla together. And Pokemon community over in America and Japan, and so on. So, like, trying to build the East and the West together is a dream idea behind it. And that's where I chose the cherry blossom as the symbol, because the cherry blossom is the peace flower between America and Japan. Sorry about that. And it's that was our goal behind that, and it's blossomed into this great project. It's brought a lot of people together, and just recently we teamed up with Sci-Fi Japan, who we're working with, and we just now have a press release from Toho. So we started getting press releases from Toho in Japan. Um, but that's what our little project is on our end. And Blake, great to have you here. By the way, it's wonderful, wonderful to meet you in person for the first time and getting to talk to you. So, if it's all right, guys, I'd love to shoot the first question, Blake. If it's all right.
Yeah, go
Sure.
ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. We're
Thank-
co-interviewing
yeah,
with you
thank,
today, and we're glad to have you on the show with us.
yeah, thank you,
Yeah.
thank you so much, guys. Thank you. Uh,
Yeah, and the website's absolutely fantastic, by the way, and we've been sharing out some of your stuff. We shared out the Tanner Wright interview that you had up there yesterday. Big fan of Tanner's work, and he's even done a cover for Territory as well.
Yeah, Tanner's such a
Yes.
great guy. He's a really close friend of mine, and I had to once I started bringing artists on the website, I had to interview him. I'm glad you guys like it. I'm glad you guys are really enjoying it, and there's going to be more stuff coming in the future as well. So Blake, the first thing I wanted to ask you was, so what inspired you to create comics? Like, was it childhood, or did you start getting into it later in life? Like, what's the origin story behind that?
Yeah, so it was I, I grew up reading comic books. My dad was a big comic book fan, and so grew up reading mostly Marvel. But it was kind of a fun thing when I was a kid. My dad would take me and my brother to the comic book store, and so got in at a pretty young age, and then kind of read them through high schoolish, and really enjoyed it. But then kind of high school through college and a little after that. I wasn't reading them as much, just kind of, my attention had shifted elsewhere. But then so I've got two kids, and my older son, once he started to kind of get into comics and get into superheroes and all that, that kind of got me back into it. And I had, in college, I'd kind of done some fun writing on the side, and I thought that was something that I kind of wanted to do. And when I got back into comics, I just kind of realized, like, hey, this is sort of a perfect medium for some of the stuff that I want to do. And so at that point, I was all the way back in, and then kind of got to learn about a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. And Territory is a story that I've had kind of bouncing around my head for a while. And it just, comics were the perfect way for me to tell that story. So it was just kind of a perfect match, and just dove into it and took it from there.
Yeah, comics are one of my favorite storytelling mediums. Like I usually read comics actually a little bit more than books almost sometimes, and yeah, like that's a very good story getting into comics. I'll let these guys ask the next question, then I'll save mine afterwards.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I mean, you said life kind of gets in the way sometimes. I mean, I was the same way myself. I was all in with comics. I was doing the weekly DC Marvel releases. I was attempting to read everything when I could, and then just life, work, everything just kind of just it just got shelved. And even still now, like I still have piles of comics. Like I can only read so much at once. And it just happens, I just constantly have a backlog. I'm like, oh, I want to cover these, but I can't yet because I got to read.
Totally, and that's and
But
it's funny because I do try to read a lot of comics, and I still read a good amount, but it's not something that like I'm constantly reading it, or same thing. I used to be at the store at least once a month, get all the get all the latest issues, blah blah blah. But now it's definitely sort of more a kind of a on the side just for enjoyment sort of thing, and the cool thing about Kickstarter and the independent scene is it caters to that really well. It's not just constantly churning out book after book after book after book, where if you miss a month or two, like you're way behind and don't even know what's going on. It's smaller
yeah,
projects, but projects that are more focused. And so I think the independent comic scene has really helped keep me interested and involved with it.
yeah, the independent scene is definitely way more focused, and even the quality of books. Like I was talking earlier before we started recording here. Like I said, Monster Matador is another indie series I love. We talked to the Kaijus and Cowboys guys. Stomped. I mean, some of my favorite comics the last couple of years have been indie comics. Don't get me wrong, I love the IDW stuff, the Image comics with Godzilla from IDW. No, IDW. Image is Godzilla. Yeah. IDW is Godzilla.
Yeah,
Image is, what am I reading from Image right now? I'm reading the Massiverse from
Massive.
Image right now.
yeah,
But there's just so much out there, and I've steered away from the big two right now. The DC Marvel stuff. They're just really churning it out. Although I have heard pretty good things about the Godzilla vs Justice League series that's going on. The Godzilla Kong Justice League series. It looked mixed at the beginning, but I've been seeing overall pretty positive reception to that. I have the comics. I just have once again they're in the backlog.
Yeah, I heard there was some wild
uh,
thing about Kong becoming a Green Lantern or something like that. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
was
saw a
seeing the picture
picture.
going around. I don't know if that's like the last. I don't know if this is the last issue that just came out or is coming out. But that sounds like that's gonna be like the grand finale is
Yeah.
bringing Kong. It sounds like I don't even know he's been in it much. Most of the pictures I've seen have been Godzilla just going around like killing the DC universe. It looks like. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know, Dan. Did you want to lead with a question or anything? Or I mean, I've got questions if you want, whatever you want to.
Yeah, I mean, so issue 4 out now. It's the first issue with the new artist on it. I thought it looked great. Um, what challenges were there with having that type of transition in production and trying to adapt to a new artist? Because I know you said previously that there was a lot of back and forth on input versus for kaiju design and stuff, and there was not any new kaiju in this one, but there was a lot of new characters uh, in this issue. How was that?
it was good. So first, I'll just kind of give a little background for people who aren't familiar with Territory. So Territory is a post-apocalyptic kaiju comic, and in this, the remaining people live in tribes, and the different tribes worship these different kaiju as gods. And so, like you said, Chris Sassman was our artist for the first 3 issues, and he was awesome. So he did those. Dan, you've got the books behind you there, issues 1, 2, and 3. And those are actually
Yeah.
the neon covers, but those are the three kind of main kaiju in the book. And so Chris came up with those. And yeah, like you said, it was a really collaborative process. And it was cool because I was a new writer and Chris was a new artist. So I think we were both really excited. And, so we talked a lot. There was a lot of discussion, kind of about what the characters would look like, what the world would look like, and all that. So Donny Hadiwidjaja is the artist on issue 4, and then he'll also be the artist on issue 5, which is going to be the final issue in the mini series. And it was great. I mean, it was definitely a transition. My goal when I started it was to work with the same team, the same artist the whole way through. Unfortunately, Frank, like you were saying, life comes up sometimes, and that's unfortunately kind of what was going on with Chris, and he just wasn't going to be able to work on the book going forward, but definitely still wanted to finish the story and finish the project. And Ichsan Ansori, the colorist, was actually friends with Donny, and so he was able to bring him on. So that helped a lot to make the transition smooth. They'd already worked together, they already knew each other, so it wasn't like a new guy coming in, like trying to learn everybody and all that. Like he already kind of had a connection, and I think that helped a lot. And he was great. So he's definitely a lot more experienced, which was really cool in a lot of ways because he had a lot of tips and tricks and ideas, and a lot of the stuff that as a newer team we were kind of working through and figuring out, he already kind of knew. And so he kind of came in and he wanted to keep the world the same. He wanted to keep the feel the same, but he also brought that sort of professionalism to the book. And I think that is really great, especially because I feel like as these issues have gone on, they've gotten a little bit more professional. And so I think he really kind of brought even more of that. And so yeah, so he was great to work with. Again, very responsive, a lot of feedback, good discussions, but he was also he's very good at what he does, and he's done it before, so he's also very knowledgeable about it. So I think that made the transition a lot easier. And so with some of the character designs and stuff, he had some really cool kind of unique ideas. And he did a good job, I thought, of capturing the feel of the characters from the first 3 books, but also putting his own spin on it. And if you read the first 4 issues, it still feels like the same world throughout. But if if you know what to look for and you're paying attention, then you'll definitely notice some little differences. And his style is very, again, similar but different. And so especially as we've got some more kind of human action going on, his style really, really captured that well. And so it just all kind of worked out. He's great. I'm really excited that he'll be back for the 5th issue because I think that he's gonna really bring a lot to it. But it was definitely an interesting transition. And I think the other big thing that helped was keeping Ichsan on the colors, keeping Marco on the letters, because they had also helped kind of create the feel of the world and everything. And so having that consistency, then with changing the artist and the style changing slightly because the other things are consistent, I think that helps, to make it so it doesn't feel like too drastic a change.
No, yeah, I could notice a difference, obviously, in the art style, but like, yeah, the whole issue just felt like it was just all part of it, and it was for the reader, it was a seamless transition.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I know when Dan had messaged you saying that you read it, that you were like, oh, I hope it all makes sense, and it really flowed. It fits perfectly into the series. It is a very, not very different, but it definitely has a different tone than the previous issues, being that it's focused on the humans, and it's got a little different feel to it, but it still feels like territory. Like this, it's because it's towards the tail end. I guess you could feel that it's getting down to the nitty gritty, and it's all coming to a head now. It was a great read, and I'm really looking forward to what you have next. What do you have? Let's pass back to Nick over here.
Well, I was going to say that it does feel like a natural
right
progression with the way it flows, which is very good. And that can be difficult when changing between artists and styles. But I felt like everything was a good point A to point B. Like it didn't feel like jointed or anything. It felt like this is like the way things should go. naturally with it. The question I was going to ask you was for when it came to world building. What ideas do you think like some of the other artists or rest of your team might have added? Like, for example, did you have like a Kaiju that you came up with, but one of the artists like had an idea as well, and you liked it so much you just kind of added it into the story, or some sort of element that the artists or the other team came up with? You're like, oh, well, this is interesting. Like, let's like debate about putting it in. Going from your writing and then your other team like. Coming up with ideas.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. And that's one of, I would say, probably the most rewarding part of this whole project has been is that, when I sent the initial script to Chris, like I had the general idea for each of the kaiju as far as, sort of the great horn. It's going to be, bear-like with the horns and the spikes and sort of this mutated looking creature and then sort of an aquatic one. But each time, taking it to him, what I would write would be, a fairly straightforward description, and then what he would, the concepts that he was sending back and everything, just took that so far beyond sort of what I had written on the page. I felt like, and I really think that helped bring the characters to life. Was he had a lot of good ideas for those little details, and especially because I told him sort of the idea behind these is I want these, I want them to feel like kaiju. I want them to feel like these big giant monsters, but these aren't space kaiju, or these aren't the super sci-fi alien type. These are a more sort of mutated, natural, almost grotesque sort of representation of what we kind of push nature to do and make it fight back. And so him, finding the little details, the little mutations, the little animalistic elements to add to these really makes them, I think, as effective as they are, because they don't, and I love all kinds of kaiju. I love the silly ones. I love the crazy ones. But with these ones, I had a
Mm.
very specific type in mind, and I wanted them to be that, sort of more grounded, more, kind of terrifying, realistic, wild type of creature. And Chris really captured all of that. And then so just adding the little details to that, whether it was adding like some of the hair to the model Ishki, which is the third one, or the way he did the spikes and the great horn sort of was this mix, and kind of blended some things together, or some of the extra aquatic elements he added to Aquamasis. Like each one, he just kind of found ways to take my idea of sort of here's this kind of natural mutated creature and really just ramp it up and make it feel monstrous.
Mm. Yeah, and the thing I love about some of the Kaiju is you chose mammals for it, because like I always thought that what was missing in a lot of recent Kaiju stories is that there's a little bit of an oversaturation on like reptiles, like trying to have sort of Godzilla copies in a way, but there's you have this variety of all these different animals that have formed into these Kaiju, and especially I love the bear. I thought that was a nod to Prophecy. Prophecy's Katahdin. You ever heard of the movie, the giant mutant bear movie?
I think
Yes.
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, highly recommend you watch it sometime. It's a really interesting movie. It's this pollution turns a grizzly bear into a giant monster, basically, but it's like deformed and it's got gills and stuff. It's a very bizarre movie. But yeah, like the bear and the bear kaiju kind of reminded me of that a little bit, and it was that's probably one of my favorite designs of yours in your book. But yeah, like all the just the variety is something I really praise about it, and I think that's really fascinating that your artists and as well as you like kind of went back and forth on all these different ideas to come up with this really great project that's blossoming into this terrific series, I think.
Well, thank you, and I think the variety. I'm glad that you noticed that and appreciate that. That was definitely something, from the outreach. I knew we were going to have a couple different ones, and I wanted them to feel, different. And so, and so basically for each one, we kind of picked a couple animals from various regions. And it was cool too, because then, you could pick kind of the animals from various regions or some tribes, taking some elements of some of the, Native Americans, American Indians from those regions. And you could really, kind of tie all those details together to make, I think that kind of helps the world building aspect of it, and it, grounds it as much as, you want it to for a story like this. Like it needs to feel fantastic. It needs to feel epic, but this at least adds those little touches where it's, people can kind of recognize and place things with stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, you picked animals from different territories.
Yeah.
But I know we're bouncing around a little here, but I know we've figured out how you got into comics. But what made you go with Kaiju for territory? What was it something that you were always into? I know you were into comics, but were you a Godzilla fan, a Kong fan, just in general monster movie fan, or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, Godzilla was I was a big Godzilla fan as a kid. That was definitely where it started. Growing up, grew up with Godzilla movies. I always liked Godzilla. I always thought he was fascinating. And then kind of that led to sort of monster movies in general, stuff like that. And when I knew I wanted to do a kaiju story before I knew I wanted to do a comic book. Like I had the idea for territory just because I liked kaiju stuff, and at that time it was mostly movies and TV shows and cinematic stuff. So I knew I wanted to tell a kaiju story, and then the idea behind territory is it is sort of a commentary on the way that especially religious leaders sort of use faith and belief and use that to manipulate people and stuff like that. And to me, the kaiju are just sort of that perfect representation of that, because they are godlike beings. Like if we saw something like this, people would worship it. Like it would have a faith built around it. And so the already liking kaiju stuff, knowing that was kind of the story I wanted to tell, the message I wanted to send, it was I knew I wanted to use kaiju in that way. And then, like I said, then later, once I kind of rediscovered comic books, it was like, oh, this is the perfect medium for it, because comics are so good at delivering those big epic moments, that you get sort of the appeal of the movies and the cinema, especially with kaiju, where you get the big scenes, the big battles, the big action, the stuff that really catches your eye. Well, on comics, you can kind of focus on those moments. You can blow them up. You can really make them, feel as big and epic as you want to. And so I think it's a perfect medium for kaiju stuff.
No, it definitely is. It really is the perfect medium. I mean, the stories and the way they've been displayed throughout these 4 issues have been great, and pretty much every time a kaiju is on the page, it's always an impactful moment in this story. I mean, even this 4th issue, not to spoil it too much because we aren't going too in depth on it yet. A lot of people haven't got to read it yet, but the kaiju is not in it very much. But when I'm losing the name now. Modeliski. Yeah, Modeliski, right? Yeah. Appears. It's a tough name sometimes. When he finally appears in the comic, it's like a big whoa, that just happened moment. So
yeah, that's one of the things about the series I really do like. The kaiju don't feel cheap.
Not at all.
They're only in there when they need to be there, like story appropriate. It's not just like, oh, they're in the background, or they're just doing some stupid. It's like they provide significant shift in tone in the story when they're there.
Oh, good. And that was the goal. And again, I think that that's one of the coolest ways kaijus are used to show, sort of this force of nature, this greater power sort of thing. And that was one thing I definitely wanted was, when they show up, they are awe-inspiring, and that's you can see why they're worshipped. You can see why in this world they are the gods, and so I'm glad that that's coming across, because it is it's a hard debate, because I want to make sure that there is enough, because I advertise this as a kaiju comic, so I want people coming in to get the kaiju. Like that's why you read the book. But at the end of the day, I definitely agree that if you overuse it, they can sort of lose that impact. And so that's, trying to find that balance has been a challenge, but a fun one of just kind of, thinking about it.
Yeah, speaking of balanced and kaiju with the story, have you seen Godzilla -1, the Oscar-winning movie?
Oh, yeah, I saw it twice in theaters, man. That was amazing. I'm glad that it won the Oscar. That's
I
cool and all, but yeah, and
Oh
it was
man,
cool because
it really was.
oh, sorry. It was cool because I saw Shin Godzilla, and I love Shin Godzilla. That's one of my favorite ones. And when I saw the ads for Godzilla -1, like I knew I was gonna see it because it's Godzilla, it's Toho. Like I'm not gonna miss it. But my going into it, I was like, if this is even half as good as Shin Godzilla, I'll be happy because I like Shin Godzilla was great, and it blew me away. I thought it was better. It was so much more than I was expecting. I was expecting it to be good. I was very excited going in, and it still blew all my expectations away. So it was, I love the fact that it's really kind of put Godzilla back on the map for a lot of people, and kind of made, because the legendary Godzilla is cool and it's fun, but this I think re-put Godzilla on the map of no, this is a cinematic icon. This is somebody that's here with a story to tell. This Godzilla is representative of so much, and -1 did such a good job of sort of reminding people of that, I think.
yeah.
Oh, that it did. Yeah, boy, it did.
Yeah. It was
Yeah,
a
no, that's
fantastic movie, and it reminded me a lot of my grandpa a little bit because fun fact. So my grandfather was actually at Bikini Atoll after World War II, and before the hydrogen bomb test happened, and that's where Godzilla becomes it's where the dinosaur becomes Godzilla, where he gets mutated and so on. So those South Pacific islands you see in the very beginning of the movie, like Odo Islands, remind me a lot of stories my grandfather would tell me about that area of the Pacific. And it's a shame he's not alive, because I would have loved to tell him, like, hey grandpa, did you run into Godzilla back then? Because the dinosaur and stuff, and just like I love the history aspect that movie brought into it, about just like tying in the post-war, and then using Godzilla as sort of a symbol for Koichi, who's the main character's trauma, and him learning to move on from the war and onto what the future holds as well. I thought that was fascinating that they went from the hydrogen bomb metaphor to instead Godzilla's a more personal thing in the movie. You know what I mean? Hmm.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. It was a fantastic movie. Like you said, it just really just we had great human story, and Godzilla really helped push that human story along. It's something we haven't seen in a while.
Hmm.
No.
I feel.
Yeah.
And that was another thing
yeah.
that I was really trying to do with territories, because I agree with you. I think a lot of times in kaiju movies, it feels like the human characters are just either background characters or disposable, or they're there to move the plot along. But rarely in at least recent kaiju media, I feel like, are the human characters really important, and can you really connect with them? Do they have their own stories? And I think that when the human character stories are strong, that kind of makes the kaiju more impactful, because if you build these strong human characters and then the kaiju come in and what they do impacts those characters, you're gonna that will make you see the kaiju differently, instead of it just being like, oh yeah, they're we see them driving, to now we see the kaiju fighting over here. No, we're seeing these characters build their lives, and suddenly the kaiju come in and change everything. That makes the kaiju feel big and important and impactful. And I think that's something that some kaiju media struggles with for some reason. I think they're so focused on the kaiju that they kind of forget this is a really good way to make them seem bigger and seem more impactful.
Mm. Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. And
Absolutely.
something I want to ask you about is this post-apocalyptic world. It's very environmentally focused, and I saw recently you made a Facebook post, not Facebook post, Instagram post. My bad. About you planting 100 trees, right? The little Yeah,
Hmm.
about playing the 100 trees. The thing I was going to
Yeah.
ask you about. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. The thing I was going to ask you was, what's the word? You're a conservationist, right? That's the word I'm thinking of. For someone plants trees stuff. Did did that kind of background, like you doing, charity work for that, did that influence some ideas in the story as well, or about the world?
Yeah, territory to me is an environmental story as well. Conservation is sort of that's probably my biggest, what I would say, passion. I like to, to me, to me, it's sort of the most
Mm,
important thing. I think of, sort of a lot of the things going on in the world right now, and it's something that is very personally important to me. It's something I try to, spend a lot of time learning about, helping, all that kind of stuff. And so, with territory, I could, I wanted to kind of accomplish a couple things. One, tell a story that sort of reflected that, gave a reminder to people. So it is an environmental story. Like in this, we have, and I left it vague on purpose, but we just know that humanity has,
mm,
basically pushed too far, and, we're in danger of wiping ourselves and sort of the rest of the planet out. And the behemoths, the kaiju in the story, are sort of nature's response to that. And and so it's kind of, it's meant to show that, if you push too far, if there are some things that if you destroy, you can't rebuild, basically. And so, definitely was a theme I wanted to include. But then I also wanted to actually act on that. And so with the territory campaigns, there's a organization called One Tree Planted. Every tree, or every dollar you donate, plants a tree. And so, and one thing, I love comics, but it is very resource heavy as well. You're printing a bunch of issues, you're shipping a bunch of them all over the place. You're using all the plastic, all the add-ons, blah blah blah. And it's cool. It's all cool stuff, but at the
mm.
same time, like, that all has an impact, right? And so, by
Yes.
donating to One Tree Planted, so basically, and with the way Kickstarter is set up, you, at least you're not supposed to, have any charitable sort of things on Kickstarter. I think that's just sort of, I'm sure, some legal stuff for them. So I just decided that basically for every, package we ship for territory, we will donate $1 to One Tree Planted to sort of counteract those costs, and as well as, just it's a good thing to do. And so that's something that's just personally important to me. And it is definitely something, it absolutely influences, the story I told, the world I built. I knew going in that I wanted to include those elements as well, because those are also important to me. So I really wanted to
Mm.
make that a focus of the story, but then actually act on it as well, because it's easy to just say, hey, look, there's this bad world if we do all these bad things. But I have an opportunity to use the story to at least help a little bit, and so just trying to do that.
Yeah, yeah, and you've done a terrific job, and did want to wish you congratulations on having this charity fund going with it, because I think it's a wonderful idea about that some of this money goes to helping restore our forests and rest of the other environments that we have across the country, to help bring something back to nature in this very advanced technological age that we have. I really like stuff like that. And yeah, like I was going to say is that that's a great thing that you're doing, and I'm in full support of it.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's not much in the scheme of things, but it's at least something. And it's I think, it's a cool way to, if you can kind of blend creativity with some of sort of those projects. I think it does. It catches people's attention. It draws attention.
Mm.
It hopefully helps kind of get other people thinking like, oh, this is cool. I kind of see what they're doing here. I see what they're saying, and then they're actually acting on it. And so just trying to, build momentum, get spread awareness for that part of it as well. Because I love storytelling; it's really fun. But that, like I said, that's probably the thing that I'm most passionate about. So if it can help anybody, inspire anything there too, then that's a win.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's this kind of reminds me a little bit about Tomoyuki Tanaka. He was hoping Godzilla would be able to end all of war when he was creating the character. Because he saw Godzilla, and Godzilla is a symbol to hopefully stop war, like the Cold War, from going on any further. And even characters like Mothra, he considers like the symbol of peace that comes after war. So I like that. Like, you're kind of following the footsteps of the original guys in a way. Having a bigger message behind the kaiju. I think that's wonderful. You're doing that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that gets kind of brought over to kind of some of the kaiju, like not as much as the environmental thing, but like that they have an impact on the earth. Like Aquamantis, even after they were gone, still had an impact after they were gone. I don't know what's up in the air with Great Horn yet, but yeah, it's like one of those things where it's like, yeah, there is, even in the book, there's still environmental causes to everything that the characters do. I mean, even it's, I don't want to get too much into this issue, but like, yeah, it's just yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things she
still
said,
destructive and are terrible.
Yeah, one of the things you said last time that stuck with me is you said even though these creatures get destroyed in these comics, like the Greenhorn in issue 3, they leave behind a legacy. So that's definitely seen here for sure.
Absolutely.
In issue 4 as well.
Yeah, well, that and I think that again, it with those kind of themes, I think it does help again create more impact and stuff, because again, you're not just like, oh, the monster dies, or this one won, this one lost. It's this is a creature, this is these things are basically ecosystems by themselves, or at least have a gigantic impact on it. So when something happens to one, there's going to be a lot of fallout, and that, I think, again just builds to that impact and makes it gets you more invested in what's happening to them.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I don't want to get too much into this issue here, but one of the things that I did want to bring up a little, it's not too spoilery, is when we were talking about design here, the new tribe that you introduce in here, all those guys are just jacked, and they make Alakia's tribe and the Great Horn's tribe just look scrawny. What is that? Was that part of the plan? Is it just this tribe's going to be like OP, like super powered almost?
Yeah, and I think this, if we were gonna have to change artists, I think this was a good time, because I think Donny coming in and sort of drawing, the new tribe his way, they feel larger than life. Like, yeah, I mean, it's they're these just absolute powerhouses of people, and in the script and the original idea was definitely, again, sort of looking at the different cultures and different tribes from these different regions. The cultures that the Great Horn tribe were based on were more hunter gathering, not as warlike, and the Model-Ishki tribe obviously much more warlike. And so trying to incorporate some of those elements, and obviously it's exaggerated for the storytelling purposes, and it is kind of fun to see these giant, you kind of have, as far as the human story so far, it's been very, everyone's just kind of happy, surviving, doing their thing, and then all of a sudden these guys come in and just wreck everything. You're like, what? Where did that come from? So I think, it's fun to see that from a story perspective. So I knew, but there was, some inspiration from looking at some different cultures, and trying to incorporate that aspect of some of the different cultures, as well as as there were some incredibly warlike, powerful tribes who were able to do stuff like this. And so I think, and having them kind of come in later after we've sort of established what one tribe looks like, and so that's kind of what you're expecting, then having this new one with a very different culture, it creates that culture shock and kind of creates that whoa moment where you're just like, where did these guys come from? What is happening?
Oh yeah, no, it really shows. Like you said, we have the different regions, different tribes. These guys, when I just saw them, I'm like, they're just like so imposing. It looks like they're just a tribe of bodybuilders. Even their chief Hosa, he's like he's a heavy, overweight guy, but he's still just
he's shredded.
Yeah. Well, and and I think that's where, because, and it was interesting because Chris, the original artist, he said that his primary inspiration was a lot of the sort of early image stuff. And so, even some of his, and I think it's just comic books in general, but even some of the characters in the Great Horn Tribe and in those first couple issues, like Falric, he's an older dude too, but like he's not like, he's pretty swole for an old guy. And it's like, so I think
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think part of the comic book medium, you kind of almost expect that, and a lot of artists just kind of draw that way. And
yeah,
then, I think Donnie kind of having that, experience, and he's done some superhero stuff and stuff like that. I think that's just sort of, kind of how he draws. But it was cool working him with this, because this was kind of the perfect, like I said, this was the perfect moment to bring in that sort of art style, because it was like, okay, we need to, this new tribe needs to be intimidating and powerful and scary, and we need to feel like they're dangerous, and the characters he drew, yeah, those are dangerous people, like those are not people that you want to mess with.
yeah,
So it just, it worked perfectly. But it's funny because you can see the different influences kind of on the characters.
yeah. I mean, at the end of issue three, we saw Falric was he was definitely shaken from seeing the Great Horn fall. But then when these guys come along, after he kind of gathered himself at the end of issue three, and he was like, "All right, I'm back in control." He even had a guy that came out and fought for him when somebody spoke out against the Great Horn. But when these guys showed up, he just turned into a complete baby this issue, and I was like, he's trying to negotiate, and the chief of the new tribe's like, you, you ain't got nothing here. Like, this story really, the way you wrote it really brought in those new characters, and we got to see a lot of them. uh, did you have any thing, Dan? I don't want to be hogging it up over here.
No, I'm more. I guess maybe like one of my last questions is, a lot of these Kickstarter comics, they don't have as many variant issues as you do. What makes you decide like what artist you want to go with, or like who's going to be doing? Like we have the manga variant covers, the neons, but then you also have a couple of just one shot covers as well on there. What makes you decide like what artist we're going to pick, and like what type of different covers do I want on your comic books?
Definitely. I think that's one really cool thing about Kickstarter and the indie scene in general, is that there are a lot of really, really talented people that, you may follow, or you may like, and you kind of see their stuff and you're like, that's awesome. But, because it's so hard to break in, there's so much, different stuff, and it's hard to, I think it's hard for some artists to get the chance to really kind of show some stuff like that. And so with this, like, this is basically my opportunity to find artists that I follow, and I'm like, their stuff is awesome, and I'm like, I really like their stuff. I want to see more of it, or I want to see how they would draw these characters, and I get to actually, do that. I get to talk to them and get their ideas. So it's, there's not really a rhyme or reason. Obviously Martha Womersley, the one who's got those neon ones that are behind you there, Dan, she did that first one, and it was just so cool and unique and different that I, pretty much was like, hey, please come back for all of them, because like we need, like, this is part of the territory identity now. And actually the last campaign was really, it kind of focused on her sort of style and the neon and all that. But for especially sort of the one-off ones and stuff like that, there's been some kind of tribute ones, just to, again, like some Godzilla stuff, because obviously a big Godzilla fan. Tanner Wright, who Sakura Central interviewed, he did the first Godzilla variant, just because, again, he's a cool kaiju artist that I liked, and I knew he liked Godzilla, and he did a great job with that. But then otherwise is, just following all these cool artists, and knowing that there's so many people out there working on so many cool things. And so just, it's basically the people that I want to see more of their art, and I want to see what their take on territory is. So I just reach out to them. And, fortunately so far, I've been very lucky on getting a lot of just really, really talented artists who have done a wide variety of covers too. I think it's cool to see, because the thing about variants is if you're going to do them, they need to feel different. Like you need to feel like you have a reason for having another cover. And so far, I think all of ours have, they all feel different. So no matter what your taste is sort of in art, there's probably a cover that will hopefully kind of stick out to you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
I got a Kaiju artist friend of mine. I'll have to recommend to you after the shows after we do this episode. He would like love to do like he would love just like this comic and to do a cover or something for it because he's really big into this kind of style that this series does. Um, but question I was going to go ahead and ask you though is, was there anything that got left on the cutting room floor when you were, working on the comics? Like any other characters, ideas, Kaiju, environments?
Um, yeah. So this is Territory is my first series. Really, it's my first sort of creative project, and so everything about it has been a learning experience for me. So I knew coming in that I wanted it to be a mini series, but originally it was going to be 6 issues. The biggest mistake that I made with Territory was not bringing in Nicole DeAndrea, who's our editor, was not bringing her in at the start. I didn't necessarily think I needed an editor or know enough to know I needed an editor at the start. And so she didn't come on until book 2. And I really wish I'd had her on originally to sort of look at the whole series and, kind of help put it all together from the start. I think that would have helped with the pacing and stuff because there's definitely been stuff that, and it's hard too when you have an idea for a story in your head for a while because you start building a ridiculous amount of little details and you want to put all of those in. But then you start writing it and you're like, there's no way without making each issue like 40 pages that I'm going to add every single little detail that I want. And then plus I'd be just bogging it down. Like the pace would be terrible. It would not be nearly as good. So, there have been a lot of little details, and so then it was cool because it really kind of taught me to think about, what is the essence of the story? What characters are important? What messages do I want to tell? How can we make sure that we're capturing those really important moments and making them as impactful as possible? And so that did mean, cutting out some little side stories, cutting out some little side characters. Nothing really as far as like kaiju. I kind of had these kaiju in mind from the beginning, and kind of knew their roles, but definitely a lot of sort of side elements that I kind of thought in my head like, oh, this would be cool, this would be cool, this would be cool, but I think would have ended up just sort of bogging the story down, especially trying to do a mini series, trying to keep it fairly condensed so that it's one whole story you can read and finish it front to back, everything that happens. And then, I think the cool thing now is hopefully people can kind of fill in some of those blanks and sort of have their own idea of, other characters or what's happening or stuff like that.
Mm, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's very
Yeah.
interesting, like just the details about that. Go on, I'm sorry.
No, 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 no. You're good. Um, yeah. One of the other questions I had is, since we were talking about the variants before, is do you have covers already for the next issue? Or I think you have teased one cover, haven't you?
Yeah.
With Alkius standing on the giant skull.
Yes. So that's Donnie's cover for issue 5. So that'll be sort of the main, the cover A, the standard cover for issue 5. And that's, Chris did the cover A's for 1 through 4. And I always tried to include the cover in the back for the next issue, just, as sort of a tease and a preview and all that. So that will be the main cover. And that one turned out amazing. And I think, I mean, I think even reading issue 4, that cover's impactful, but especially after you finish issue 5 and you finish the story, I think that cover just summarizes so much of what we wanted to say that it's definitely one of my favorite covers we've done. Just because I mean it looks amazing, the colors are great. Ichsan did the colors and he did a wonderful job, and then the way Donny drew everything, the details and stuff are awesome, but especially what it represents and how it represents the story, I think is just perfect. We have we also have two more covers. So one other cover is done for issue 5, and it's someone who has worked on Godzilla in the past. I'm not going to say specifically who yet, but it's she did a great job, and I'm really excited to see that one. And then Martha Womersley will be back for her sort of grand finale cover, and been talking to her, and I haven't seen what she's been working on yet, but I'm already really excited. And then yeah, I mean
Yeah.
we've got some ideas sort of. We'll probably do about one more and kind of talking, you know, talking to some people, and especially with this being the last issue, really want to go all out, and I think once they're all done, everyone will be very happy.
And
Yeah.
I know that you had mentioned about this last issue. Is it going to be a longer issue?
Yes, so the last issue
Or
will be 32 pages. So 1 through 4 have all been 22-page issues. Issue 5 will be a 32-page behemoth size finale.
that's really right.
Yeah.
And bringing Martha back. I mean, we expected it because she's been on for all of them.
Yes.
She's one of my favorite kaiju artists out there. I mean, anytime she teases that she's got a new art coming out sometime during the week, I'm like, oh man, I gotta just keep checking that page to see what she's posting.
Yeah. Well, no,
Yeah, she's absolutely fantastic.
she is, and she's awesome to work with too. She's super cool, super chill. Like, I love working with her too, because she's somebody I would just want to drink a beer with and hang out with. But then her
Yeah, she
style,
just looks so
yeah,
chill.
her style is so unique, and and that's the thing with kaiju is I feel like because they can be so varied and they can be representative of so many things, that they're really good for sort of allowing people to kind of put their mark on their kaiju media, whatever it is, whether it's art or story or whatever. And her personality, her unique style comes through so well in all of her, especially kaiju pieces she does, that yeah, I'm so glad that she's been willing to work with us through all this, because it like I said, to me, her covers are a core part of territory. So
Yes, absolutely. And the cover, like you said at the end of this issue 4, after reading issue 4, I could absolutely feel what that fifth cover is implying and the impact of everything that it's going to be leading up to. Uh, I'm just really excited for it, man.
Me too.
thank you. Well, thank you. It's and it's cool because like I said, I had the idea for the ending, pretty much the whole time, and it's been tweaked a little bit. And I think to really sell all the points that have kind of been coming up through the series. But we just finished the final edits for the script for issue 5, and having read it, I'm very excited, I'm very proud, I'm very happy about this one. I feel like it delivers the ending that this story deserves. I feel like we really are going to show, we're going to tell the story we want to tell. We're going to send the messages we want to send. And I think, the emotional impact, and just the feeling you get by the end of issue 5, reading through it was what I wanted it to be. And so I'm really excited, because I know, and I've just seen the words. So, I know it's going to get even better once Donny starts working on the art. And then once, Ichsan adds the colors, like, it's just going to keep getting better. So I think, especially for guys like you guys who have been there, the whole time, and seen this project since it just started, and, seen it grow and seen it building towards this finale. I really think it's gonna, it's gonna be worth it. In issue 4, I was really proud, and I think it did a great job of getting us to that point. Like, at this point, we're at the edge, ready to jump off. So
Yeah.
Oh boy,
Yeah.
are we. Entering.
Yeah. I'm
Speaking
I'm
of
very
going off the edge.
Yeah. I'm like super
literally issue 4. um, but once this finale does come, what are the future plans? Do you have another story in mind? I know you said this is your first creative project. Do you have any other projects in your head going on? Are you possibly thinking of spinning something off from here?
So I do have actually 2 stories in mind. that I want to do next, neither of which is territory related. Unfortunately, neither of which is kaiju related. But and I originally said once territory's done, that's it. I've told the story, and it was the story I wanted to tell. It's the story I've had in my ears. I'll put it out there. I'll tell the story, and that'll be it. I'll be done with it. I'll be happy it's there, and I'll be glad I did it. But as we've made this, I have two different ideas for. One would be sort of a spin-off. It would be in the same world, with kind of similar ideas, but just a new approach, and honestly even trying to take sort of the core idea and blow it up and make it even bigger. And so I think that would be the next territory project I would want to work on. And then I do, especially as I've been working on issue 4 and issue 5 and finalizing this story, I've been thinking of sort of the next steps for these characters and Alkia specifically. What developing her as a character has been really, really cool. Like, she is representative of a lot of the things I feel personally, but also just seeing her as a character evolve and has been something really cool to see. I feel like she's really kind of taken on a life and a story of her own, and so it kind of I've been thinking about like that a lot, and have come up with an idea for sort of a kind of a sequel, or story down the line with her too. So and the territory stuff would be down the road, because I have these are a couple things I want to work on first. But especially now that I have done this and I've kind of at least am somewhat familiar with the process now, I feel like I can start sort of ramping up and doing more stories, and I'm excited to do that.
No, that's great news. I mean, you deserve it. I mean, you've had, like you said, you've had this story in your head for years, and I'm glad that you're able to deliver the finale that you wanted to have. And I think it's going to be pretty epic based on what you've been telling us and what we've seen so far. Alkia's story really has been like you just seen her develop as a character. This fourth issue, I felt like we didn't see her a lot, but a lot of things happened for her or impacted her.
Yes.
This issue, and like I said, that final cover I think really tells where the story's going.
Yeah.
I'm just really curious to see where this goes next. I'm just excited, and yeah. I just want to see what you got served up for us next. And you deserve some rest on it. I mean, you've labored really hard on this. How many years has this been? It's been about 2 years now.
Yeah, I mean,
since issue 1.
I think the first campaign was in 2021. I want to say. I think it was towards the end of 2021, if I remember right. So yeah, I mean, it's been and it was probably about a year before that of sort of at least working on the scripts and everything, and then putting the team together and sort of and then all the hard, because that's it's crazy just how one thing I've realized is it's crazy how much work art is. Like, the amount of work that Chris and Donny and Ichsan and Marco and all these this team has put into it. Like, it's and I think it shows through. Like, this book feels like there was a lot of love put into it, and being able to see it from this side, there definitely was. But I think it's been probably about 3 or 4 years, just kind of since it's been a team, and even a year or two before that of just sort of concepting and stuff like that. So all told, by the time this is out, I think we'll be looking at probably a 5 or 6 year project, which for a 5-issue miniseries is definitely a long time. But the thing was, we wanted to make sure that what we were putting out was the best thing we could. We didn't want to rush it. We didn't want to cut corners, and I feel like we've been able to do that. So
yeah,
I think it's definitely paid off.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a quality series. I mean, it's, like I said, I was saying before, it's probably one of my favorite ones that I've read in recent years. And when the thing with these indie series is everybody that's working on they have the time, and they put in the time to make it the best that they can. It's not just something that's getting tossed together and just churned out. So I understand the break. You want to, once it's complete, I'm sure you want to possibly do it as a volume collection and try to distribute it and get it out to the masses and let everyone sort of indulge in it, take it in, and then the fan base for it might grow even more. I mean, I feel that it's grown each issue. The You've done better and better with each campaign, and I just really think this story deserves a much larger fan base.
Well,
I love these indie stories.
thank you. And honestly, and it has been cool to watch, the fan base grow, especially as someone who is new to this sort of world, coming in with literally zero fan, well, outside of like my mom, coming in and seeing people start to, start to get into it and to follow it and to care about the characters and to be like, hey, this part was really cool. Or I like this character. Just those getting that kind of feedback, is really inspiring because you're like, okay, cool. This is, people are enjoying this and they're getting something out of it. This isn't just something that I think is cool. It's cool to see that other people are able to relate to it or get enjoyment from it. And people like you guys have been so instrumental and helpful in that because, as it's crazy especially as like an indie creator, because you send this stuff out, you work really hard on it, you get it, you send it out, and then you basically hear crickets for like a little bit, and then you're just like, well, it's out there. Do people like it? Do they hate it? Was it worth it? Is anyone even reading it? And so then when you guys come on, and you're reaching out to me, and we get to do these interviews, and you guys are talking to me about the characters and the world and everything like that, and bringing in like Sakura Central and other people who are coming in like, hey, yeah, this is really cool, and so just seeing that there are people out there enjoying it, and who are excited for more of it, who are excited to see where this story goes. Like that is, the creatively fulfilling part of it. So I want to thank you guys for being so supportive of it, for engaging, for talking, for promoting it, for doing all the things that you guys do. Cause that kind of stuff is, it is so impactful to me and the team. And it shows us that, hey, this is, we are doing something cool here. Let's keep going, because there are people that are enjoying it. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and thank you for making
Absolutely.
such a
Thanks.
wonderful
Of course.
series.
Thank you.
Again, it's a great series. I'm looking forward to what's next in the future.
Yeah, well, I'm very excited for I'm really excited to get this issue out. I'm really excited for people to read issue 4, because it is, like you said, I think this sets up Alkia for her grand finale, and it sets up it really, I think, kind of, it introduces a new element, but it keeps the story going. And like I said, I feel like this is the one that takes us to the ledge, and then issue 5 we're allowed to just dive in head first and really go for it. So I'm excited to get this issue out there. Excited to see what people think of it, and hopefully, with Donny coming on board and everything like that, like hopefully, that'll people will kind of see some of the new stuff we have going on, what we're trying to do, and and be ready for the last issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess does anybody else have any questions, or should I wrap up over here? Anything? All right. So why don't you just plug just where people can follow you, where they can find territory, and yeah.
Definitely. So, so I'm Blake McCarthy. I'm the writer of Territory. The rest of the team, it's drawn. The first 3 issues are drawn by Chris Sassman. The last 2 issues, 4 and 5, are drawn by Donny Hadiwidjaja. Ichsan Ansori is the colorist. Marco Della Verde is the letterer. Nicole DeAndrea is the editor. So the easiest way to kind of keep track of me is probably on Twitter at BMC Comics, or Instagram at the same handle. I'm also on Blue Sky. And then most of the other creative team is on at least one of those apps, posting to various degrees. So, so we're working. The first 4 issues have all been funded through Kickstarter. The plan is for the 5th issue to be funded through Kickstarter as well. So follow us on social media to kind of keep up with, the campaign, and when we have more details for that. Also, if you want to read the first 3 issues for free to catch up, you can on Global Comics. which is Global COMIX, and just search Territory there, and the first 3 issues are there for free. So if you just want to check it out, that's a great way to do it. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's really cool that you put them out on Global Comics for free for everybody to read. It's just another way to reach more fans for the series.
Totally, and it's cool because I think we're up to 11 or 12,000 views on there now, which
Wow.
for like not having any real connections or anything, like it's been cool to see that it's at least kind of found an audience there, and it even the first one still there's always a couple people checking it out, so that's pretty cool.
No,
Yeah.
it's just such a great series that touches on so many different genres. It's not just kaiju. You got the post-apocalyptic feel. You have the tribal feel. You got so much going on in it, but it's just so well balanced. And like I said, we always enjoy it, and we're always looking forward to what you have for us next. And we really appreciate all you guys coming on here. I don't know, Nick, did you have anything else for Blake?
As far as questions, at the moment, no. Like I got my questions down. Actually, no. I actually do got one more. Would you be interested in like showing up to conventions and events in the future? Like, there's Kaiju Brooklyn, which Sakura Central is actually sponsoring right now. It's the big East Coast Kaiju convention that's happening in May. And then we have G Fest, where I'm actually one of the staff guys for the video game tournament at Godzilla Fest in Chicago. Would you be interested in ever showing up and having a table of the comics to like meet and greets, stuff like that?
Yeah. So I live in Colorado, and there's one kind of cool shop in Denver that I've gone to a couple times for some like releases and some kind of smaller cons and stuff like that. And I'm looking to hopefully this year go to some more and a little bit bigger of the cons here in Colorado, just to kind of dip my toes in that water. I would eventually. I've never been to G Fest. I would love to go. I've heard about Kaiju Brooklyn. It sounds cool too. I would love to go. Logistically, I do, with the family and work and everything. I don't know how realistic it is in the near future, but I'm hoping that somewhere down the line I can make it happen, because it definitely interests me. I'd love to do it. I just got to kind of figure out how.
Yeah. That's one of the things questions I keep forgetting to ask you. What do you do for work? I do IT. Dan works in a hospital. He works in an X-ray department. He's one of the leads in the department. I'm one of the leads in my IT office in a school district for an IT company. What do you do for your main job? I mean, is it something with writing? Is it related at all?
Not even a little bit. I'm a firefighter and a paramedic, so this is purely just like
Oh wow.
a passion project because I want to.
Wow. Well, thank you for doing that. Firefighting,
Yeah, thank
paramedics.
you.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
great.
honestly, it's a fun job, man. I like it, but the cool thing about it is it does give me the time, because we do 48-hour schedules, and then we get 96 hours off. So it gives me the time to put into work, really devoting myself to something like this, which is, awesome. It's what I want to be able to do, so it allows me to do that.
That's really great. That's awesome. That's really cool. See, now we know that. It's just something that I'm always like, oh, I should ask him. What does he do? I'm like, because is this his main thing or not? But this is your first project, so obviously it's not your main thing yet.
No, but and honestly, it's kind of cool that way, because as I can do it, I can dedicate as much as I want to it, but at the same time, it's not something I feel like I gotta, I do have to crunch those deadlines or churn stuff out. It's like
Yeah.
I can make sure and do this and do it the way I want to do it, and that's the goal. So
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, it is quite the perfect job it gives you the perfect balance of time to work on it. I mean, like I said, life happens. I mean, like I said, me and Dan were just basically sick like dogs for the first 3 months of this year. And then it's just, work, kids, then the kids are sick. And
Oh, yeah.
it's just, sometimes it's just impossible to get anything going. I mean, we've been talking with Nick about doing a co-interview since January now, I believe. and it's just like I've been sick, Dan's been sick. It's just been. We pretty much took like a 3-month break without even planning on doing that.
Yeah, we planned on taking off for the holidays, like take a month off, and it ended up being 3 months.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you enjoyed a little time off.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, it was because you're sick, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but yeah, it was really great talking to you guys. We appreciate you coming on, and we appreciate you, Nick, helping us out here and sharing us out on Sakura Central. And yeah, we look forward to talking to you guys in the future for sure.